Welcome to the Creative Penn podcast. I'm Joanna Penn, thriller author and creative entrepreneur, bringing you interviews, inspiration, and information on writing, publishing options, and marketing ideas for your book. You can find the episode show notes, your free author blueprint, and lots more information at thecreativepenn.com. And that's Penn with a double N. And here's the show. Hello creatives, I'm Joanna Penn, and this is episode number 671 of the podcast, and it is Thursday the 26th of January 2023 as I record this special surprise in-between-isode featuring snippets of interviews around writing travel memoir that you might find interesting. Because, yes, I have a Kickstarter running as this goes out for my new travel memoir, solo walking book, Pilgrimage, Lessons Learned from Solo Walking 3 Ancient Ways. And I've been doing interviews on the topic on various shows, so I wanted to share some snippets with you. It might also introduce you to new shows that you might enjoy, and you can find them all on your podcast app, wherever you're listening to this. The clips are from Travel Writing World, Wish I'd Known Then, and Sacred Steps. And I was also on Into the Woods. I've included different clips on my Books and Travel podcast, more about the walking and spiritual side than the writing side, so you can also have a listen there if you like more of this snippet style show. I also wanted to let you know that we reached the first stretch goal in the Kickstarter campaign, even though I was scared of not making it, which I discuss in one of the snippets. So all backers to the Kickstarter will now get an extra audio with a transcript on how I turned hundreds of pages of handwritten journal entries and hundreds of photos into a finished travel memoir. Now, this will only go to backers. I won't be putting it out on the podcast, and I will probably turn it into a book at some point of how to write a travel memoir, but that probably won't come out until 2024 or something like that. So this will only go to backers. So even if you're not interested in my pilgrimage book, you might be interested in backing the Kickstarter campaign to get this extra tips on writing travel memoir, which will be like a sort of probably like a novella length thing. And you can back the campaign with just a few pounds, or of course you can get my limited edition hardback, you can get the audiobook narrated by me, you can get the ebook, paperback, workbook, spiral bound, very nice. But yes, just go on over to jfpenn.com/pilgrimage, and that will redirect to the Kickstarter until the 5th of February 2023, after which it will redirect to wherever the book is available later in the year. So that's jfpenn.com/pilgrimage. In this episode, I talk about how pilgrimage fits across several subcategories of the travel genre and the perils of writing cross-genre. Fear of sharing the personal aspects of a memoir, because I've never written a memoir before, fear of launching, fear of failure, fear of judgment, and being terrified of doing a Kickstarter. And this was recorded several days before the launch, so thankfully it's going quite well. But still, it was good to capture the fear because, yeah, my heart was just banging in my chest when I clicked the launch button, and there really is a launch button. And also how journals can be the basis of writing a travel memoir, structuring a book around theme, and why you have to think of the reader. So let's get into it. In this clip from the Travel Writing World podcast with Jeremy Bassetti, I talk about how pilgrimage sits across different subgenres of the travel niche. So this is Jeremy Bassetti.
You'd mentioned your journal and leaning into your journal and writing this book. And so it has kind of this memoir or travelogue component to it. It has an account of your pilgrimages, but it's also kind of like a guidebook, if I may, for the idea of going out and going on a pilgrimage itself. So it does many things, this book, but I was wondering, like, how would you describe the book?
Well, you know how difficult this is, is trying to figure out what it was. And originally I thought I would write travel guides to the routes. I thought I would just have 3 travelogue type books. And then I thought I'd have a travel memoir about all the travels my life. And then I realized after I finished the Camino that I did have a personal arc, a character arc. And this is memoir, I think, is defined by some kind of transformational arc in the person.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you can go on a trip, like your photography trip to Bolivia, for example. That doesn't have to change your life or the direction of your life. It can just be a trip and taking photos and whatever. In terms of how I would describe it, it's kind of travel memoir. So it is a personal, emotional, spiritual transformation, but it's also a self-help guide for people who want to do solo walking. And I put in the appendices some very practical things, including accommodation and stuff like that. So I feel like it can do both, but of course that makes it very difficult in terms of a particular genre. But yeah, I guess it falls through the gaps of so many subgenres, but I hope it's both useful to people who consider the idea of pilgrimage, but also those who practically want help.
Mm-hmm. You'd mentioned that you originally set out to write travel guides and also like a memoir. So I was wondering if like the evolution of the idea of the book, did that happen as you were writing it, or did that happen in kind of like in the earlier stages when you're trying to figure out what it is exactly you were going to write?
Yeah, it really happened right at the end there. Once I came back from the Camino, I mean, I had over 100,000 words in a Scrivener project. And like yourself, I've read very many travel books over decades. And so I had a lot of quotes and I had a lot of musings, and I just didn't know what the book was going to be until I returned from the Camino and I realized that I had discovered home, for example, which is something I really hadn't felt before, which is quite weird. But I think many travelers feel this, like, where is my home? And I did kind of discover that. I also had a sort of midlife realizations around things. I had so much material for this. And this is the problem with writing. Of course, you can end up with so much material. But when I read it, so much was repetitive. And this is a danger of the travel log, I think. I mean, if you're walking pilgrimage routes or any multi-day walking, every day is the same. So that's what I ended up just doing, one small chapter on the Pilgrim's Day. But it's very simple life. Right. But the bigger question is, what is the transformation? So yeah, I really didn't know until the end. And in fact, even my cover, I've got a blog post on this. My audience thought they wanted this particular cover, sort of commercial travel guide cover with blue skies and sun. And I ended up choosing one of my own pictures from the St. Cuthbert's Way, which is one of my photos of a hill to climb and stormy skies, which is far more of what pilgrimage is to me. And I think most people, it's more truthful. So yeah, pilgrimage is a challenge, and writing a book about it is certainly a challenge. So my discussion with Jeremy continues into why walk a pilgrimage when I am not religious, why walking is healing and pilgrimage in particular can heal deeper wounds of the soul, how the gifts of pilgrimage come with hindsight, why we travel, and how to figure out what kind of travel book to write. You can listen to the rest of the episode on Travel Writing World on your favourite podcast app. Jeremy also has interviews with travel writers like Pico Iyer, Colin Thubron, and many more on his show. And check out his website, travelwritingworld.com. Jeremy has also been on this podcast talking about the different subgenres of travel writing, tackling imposter syndrome, and more. So links to that in the show notes, or just search the feed for Jeremy. In the next clip, I'm on the Wish I'd Known Then podcast with Sarah Rosette and Jamie Albright. And we've known each other for years, so it's quite a jolly chat, and we have a great in-depth discussion. In this excerpt, we talk about fear. Fear of sharing personal aspects in the memoir, fear of launching, fear of failure, fear of judgment. Oh my goodness, so many fears going into this for sure. So Jamie is the first speaker.
Speaking of things being scary, was it scary to write a lot of personal things? I mean,
yeah,
I'm an oversharer, so for me that would not be that hard, but I know you're not. So
No, I think it's interesting because, of course, we have our boundaries, right? We have all our lines. And of course, I share a lot also. And I have done since I was online in 2008. And also in my fiction, actually, I share a lot of my thoughts on like religion through my characters. So Morgan Sierra, particularly in my Arcane series, has thoughts about religion and various things that come from my own experience, or some of my travel experiences are fictionalized. But this is the first memoir where it's like, this is actually me and it's not fictionalized. And, you know, so I don't know, it is really kind of emotionally revealing to me anyway. I feel the book is emotionally revealing in a way that I haven't been. And that's scary. It's the fear of judgment. I always have fear of judgment about any book. Yeah, I don't know what I'm scared of, but I'm really scared. I mean, I almost feel now that the book is done. I cannot change it. And in fact, I only gave it to my husband when it was finished. And I only gave it to my mum when it was finished. And those two people, I was like, I really hope they don't say I can't publish it.
Right.
Because it's already done. I actually gave them the hardback.
Wow.
Yes, because I felt like it's my story, and if they don't want me to publish it, I'm going to have to argue that. Thankfully, they both said it was okay, although my mum was sad because she felt like she didn't know necessarily at the time what I was going through. But I said to her, and this would be true if anyone's having mental health issues, sometimes when you're going through things, you cannot ask for help because you're in the darkness, right? So you don't even
realize you're going through things until you look back later and go, oh, that was not a good time. Sometimes I'm in self-denial a lot about a lot of things. So I totally understand that.
Right.
But that's why almost journaling is so important. I mean, I read some of the journal entries that I've put in a book and I'm like, I don't even know that person.
Well, speaking of fear, let's talk about the Kickstarter, because I totally identify with being a lot worried about the Kickstarter. So you're doing a Kickstarter. And so talk to us about like the fear around the Kickstarter, or maybe someone may not do a Kickstarter, but they might do a launch. And when I did my Kickstarter, I was like, okay, I remember now. I used to feel this way when I launched a book, and now I'm more in the routine of launching a book. So it's not as scary, but the Kickstarter brought it all back. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, and thank you for your help, because I emailed you and you've helped me with various questions like international shipping, which in itself
is terrifying.
It is terrifying because you realize, like, specifically, I had put will ship to all countries and I'd come up with a price for all countries. And then I just checked a few things like, okay, how much to send to Peru or Malawi or Indonesia? And then I was like, okay, then I can't use
maybe delete.
I did. So essentially, and we're recording this just a few days before it starts, I've put 6 main countries, and then I've put, please email me if you want me to add your country to any level. But yes, in terms of the fear, so it's so funny you talk about launches, because I also realized that I have not officially launched a book for probably 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
As in, all I do is, I finish the book. I do a very short pre-order, sometimes like just a month when it's already finished. I upload all the formats, and then when it goes out that day, I just send an email, talk about it on the podcast, and that's about it, really. Yeah. I might put a few ads on. And so I haven't really launched a book in so long that this feels very, very weird. So that's one thing, is the launch, because I'm also like you both, I'm quite low key. I don't do hard selling. So I normally like, here it is, buy it whenever you like. You know, it doesn't matter, very low key. And this is like, you buy it in this 2-week period and you have to, I guess, tell people more often, like email more than once a month or, you know, do some videos and maybe do social media every day and all this stuff that I haven't done like probably ever. So that's one thing, is sort of fear of launch. Also, basically, I'm writing. So this is a new genre with travel memoir, a new format. I'm doing this special hardcover with a flyleaf with color photos inside, which I've never done before. It's got silver foil. I mean, it's really beautiful. And a new platform, Kickstarter. So, and I think if I'd have thought about that beforehand, I may not have gone ahead. Because, new genre, new format, new
just
platform.
dive into the deep end. Yeah.
it's so funny because, of course, last year, I say of course, but last year in 2022, I didn't mention this up front, but I built my Shopify store, creativepenbooks.com. And that was a massive project too, putting my entire backlist onto Shopify and all that. So yeah, I'm afraid of the book, the emotional potential response to the book. I'm afraid of getting something really wrong that affects the money. I'm afraid that I will be very embarrassed because this is not aimed at my target audience. So I may not fund. I've put it really low, so I hope to fund. But to be frank, I've got a platform and I've got a book on how to market a book. So if I can't, I'll be very embarrassed, basically. So yeah, it does feel like a risk. And yet I was reflecting on this morning thinking, this is good because I've been publishing since 2008. I published my first book, and yeah, it's good to switch things up and to push your comfort zone. And look, if this was still the same year after year after year, we would be bored and we would go do another job. So that episode was recorded just a few days before launching the Kickstarter. And as I record this now, it is almost at £14,000, which is around $17,000 US. And my goal was £1,000. So I am so pleased. And it's important to share those fears because I really was very scared. But thank you to everyone who has bought the book through the campaign. And as I record this, of course, the book hasn't gone out because with Kickstarter, what happens is you have to wait till it funds and then you get the money like 2 weeks after it finishes. And so I'll be sending the book out mid-February, I guess, to all backers. And then people will actually read it. So I'm still scared of the emotional side, but at least we can say at this point the Kickstarter is funded and the campaign is going well. And of course, you can still join all the way up to the 5th of February. So in the rest of the discussion with Jamie and Sarah, we talk about intuitive writing, how indie authors can now make beautiful books, direct sales and empowerment, and some futurist things, inevitably. I talk about AI and how we can incorporate that in our writing. So there are loads of great interviews and discussions on the Wish I'd Known Then podcast around lots of genres, writing craft, business tips, plus Sarah and Jamie are lovely, friendly hosts. So check that out wherever you listen to podcasts and visit wishidknownforwriters.com. Sarah has also been on this show before talking about structuring and writing series. So yeah, search in the backlist for Sarah Rosette, and that's Sara. So in this next clip, I'm on the Sacred Steps podcast with Kevin Donoghue, which is a podcast all about pilgrimage. Kevin is also writing a travel memoir, and we discuss how our journals are the basis of writing and why it might be easier to structure around themes, but also why you have to think of the reader and change your perspective if you want to use your journals in writing. So here's Kevin.
Specifically on the journal side, I found the easiest, the most comfortable for me way to present this was really, as you said, around some simple themes. And for me, they are faith, hope, and love. And so what are those elements of my pilgrimage where those have been, there are lessons learned, there are days that brought forth these simple, even tropes of this is how I was impacted in these three theme spaces. And as you said, people do pilgrimage for different reasons, but for me, it's been finding what are the questions I should be asking myself about these three elements that are so important in my life, and what are the answers that have been inspired by my experiences or my time to think about these things. So that's really the context for me.
The other thing about writing a book, we should say, is that it's also for other people. Like, you can keep your journal as your own experience, but when you write a book, and as you said, I've written a lot of them, they are for other people to read. So I've actually got, in mine, I have a lot of practical tips, for example, about solo walking and gear and other stuff like that. Food. I have a chapter on suffering and all of this different type of stuff, and my spiritual faith journey, all of that kind of thing. But I do think that our tips from doing these longer walks can also be useful for others. So, and I was going to comment on truth with a big T, a capital T, and truth with a little t, because this is important for you writing a novel as well. So truth with a big T is the things that you're going to write in fiction, potentially, that mean love, hope, and whatever. But you will be fictionalizing or concatenating or changing or exaggerating things that didn't happen that way in order to underscore the bigger truth of pilgrimage. And so this is really important to keep in mind when people are reading a travel memoir, is that the writer will have sometimes potentially changed the truth with a little t in order to make the truth with a big T the point. And I certainly, like, some of my journal entries that I include in the book are from different points, but I use them in chapters around certain elements to underscore the point that I hope will be useful for other pilgrims. So yeah, the experience of writing a book is almost a pilgrimage in itself. So I hope you found those clips interesting. And I actually quite enjoyed putting this together from these different clips, but I might do some of these types of episodes again in the future. But it is a lot more work than doing an interview, to be sure. And you can listen to the complete episodes on the podcast feeds for Travel Writing World with Jeremy Bassetti, Wish I'd Known Then with Sarah Rosette and Jamie Albright, Sacred Steps with Kevin Donahue. And I was also on Holly Wharton's Into the Woods podcast. And I've also done one of these clip episodes with different clips on my Books and Travel podcast. So if you'd like to hear more, head on over to Books and Travel on your podcast app to have a listen. So as this goes out, Pilgrimage is available on my Kickstarter campaign. Just go to jfpenn.com/pilgrimage and it's available in the limited, signed, hardback, as well as paperback, ebook, audiobook narrated by me, large print and workbook editions. Plus, you can get a course on writing settings and sense of place and lots of other things. And of course, if you are a backer, you'll get the extra How to Write Travel Memoir Lessons Learned, which is only for backers of the Kickstarter. So it will be on Kickstarter until the 5th of February 2023, and then you can still visit that link to find it on other stores later in the year, probably from May. So that's jfpenn.com/pilgrimage. So, on the usual Monday show, I'll be talking to Steve Piper about selling books direct, not Kickstarter. We're talking more about the Shopify side, and I've learned a lot from Steve about optimizing sales. So we have a great conversation I think you'll find interesting. In the meantime, happy writing, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You might also like the backlist episodes and show notes available at thecreativpenn.com/podcast. You can also get your free author blueprint at thecreativpenn.com/blueprint. If you'd like to connect, you can tweet me at The Creative Penn or find me on Facebook at The Creative Penn. See you next time.